Good morning. I am extremely delighted to be with you today. It's always fun to address groups of human resources, and I really appreciated Dame Carol's remarks. She reminds me a number of years ago I had a doctoral student who was studying health and wellness in business. And he said, "Dave, I love to publish articles with you, but you can never present them because you're not as healthy and well as you should be." So I appreciate the ideas and the research she's done. It is a powerful area. Let me take you on a journey this morning and come with me to think about ideas we're interested in. My passion is to reshape the present and reimagine the future. How do you begin to figure out what's next? I'm so excited about this. This is the first time I've been able to present some of this, and hopefully this will be of interest to you. I think we have in our field of HR some incredibly good ideas that have impact. So last November, I decided with HRCI, the Human Resource Capital Institute, to pull together 70 thought leaders to write essays. What's the future of HR? And what do we need to do to be successful in that future? Those essays have just been completed into a book. I will send a copy of that to Nicole in March, and she will send all of you a free copy. It's exciting to see what this field holds and where we're headed. I think in some ways, ideas with impact will shape who we are and what we do. And I believe we are at a crossroads in HR on two dimensions. One is content. Do we focus on services? One of the leading HR organizations in the world has come up with a new standard for good HR. Revenue or cost per hire per employee. How many of you have met with a senior general manager in the last 3 months? Some of you? Super. How many of those general managers are most concerned in their job about the cost per hire per employee? They said, "Oh, I am worried about the cost per hire per employee." I think that's the crossroads. The other side is, what is it they're worried about? What are the business results? What are the outcomes? I want to focus HR on the content that has outcomes. And that's what these thought leaders, I think, have helped us do. The other is process. In HR today, analytics are a big deal. Analytics have two dimensions. One is puzzle. Give me a data set. Give me the insight. And I think you saw some great presentations of that Dame Carol just presented. But I'm also interested in what's called mystery. Don't give me the answer, give me the question. And so today I'm going to take you more at the bottom right. What does HR look like in business outcomes with questions to which we don't have answers? That's a quick introduction. That's my passion. That's my interest. We write books about that. We have a new book. It's called, and you're all going to get a free copy. It's really interesting to go to the field and say, let's do a book for free. And send it, and we think this book's going to hit about 1 million people by mid-June. How do we shape the field of HR with ideas that have impact? So here's my 3 questions. And if you're taking notes, these are the 3 things we're going to talk about. And I'm actually going to involve you, so I'm going to have you answer the 3 questions. So let's start with question number 1. Could you jot down for just a moment, and don't worry about 2 and 3, you'll come back to those. What's the biggest challenge in my job today? Just take a second and think about that question. Off the top of your head, what's the biggest challenge in my job today? And I hope the answer is not a person. That gets back to what Dame Carol talked about. My biggest challenge is this person next to me. So, what's the biggest challenge in my job today? Let me see if 2 or 3 of you could share. What would you say? What's the biggest challenge in my job today? What would you say? Actually, what I should do is look at the person sitting next to you and read me what they wrote. So, what did he write? Just pick one of those 2 gentlemen and tell me what they wrote. Go ahead. They didn't write anything. Okay. Let me tell you how this works. If you answer the questions, you'll get more out of the workshop. So, what's the biggest challenge? Yeah. Organic growth, that's a great one. That's a great one because we can grow through mergers or acquisitions, but how do we grow from inside? By the way, organic goes back to Dame Carol's comments. You should eat organically and you should grow organically, just so that you link. I'm trying to link these two sessions. Work-life balance. By the way, you've just dated yourself. Work-life balance says that you're not Generation X. Generation X says life-work balance. Generation Y says life-work balance. Life is before work. By the way, welcome to my world.
Thank you. But it's the paradox between what we ask them to do and the whole paradigm of you need to be...
Good. So there's this inherent paradox between the person and the organization, between long-term, short-term, work and non-work. By the way, let me just share with you, I think one of the challenges that we're looking at the future as you reimagine HR, and I love your word, and you've just reaffirmed it, is the management of paradox. We love to look in solving puzzles for an answer. When we deal with mysteries, we don't have answers, we have paradoxes that require choice. And I think that paradox is fascinating. Do you help more the individual, or do you help the organization? And the answer is yes. And how do I rise above that paradox? That's one of the things we're looking at for future of HR. Great comment, great comment. Whatever you wrote down, and you've now had time to write, did they repent? Oh, good. What did he write? The challenge he's facing today is responding to a bozo professor who's asking him questions. Delivering business results. Good. I don't care what you wrote, but I want to think with you. I think the field of HR has gone through an evolution. At the first curve, the challenge is administrative. And the curve continues. Cost per hire per employee is an administrative result. Am I managing my costs? Am I managing the administrative efficiency? We shifted in the field to functional expertise. My challenge is hiring good people, retaining good people, training good people. My challenge is compensation. For the last 20 years, myself and others have talked about strategic HR. My challenge is linking what we know and do to the strategy of the company. I think in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, we've now gone to the next step. Strategic HR says, look in the mirror of business results, organic growth, business results. What are the HR practices to do that? Who do we hire? How do we train? How do we pay? I now want to take you to what I think is the next challenge, outside in. Don't look at what my business is struggling with, but look at what my marketplace is struggling with. And the challenge is not delivering organic growth, it's anticipating and meeting future customer goals. So instead of strategy being a mirror, make it a window. Look through the strategy to the outside world. And the challenge in HR, I think, to fully deliver value is to go beyond what the strategy is to think outside. That's abstract. Here's some examples. You just saw on the slide that was presented a really cool concept. We want to be the employer of choice. I've been at workshops, I've talked about it, it's lovely. Change it. Are we the employer of choice of employees our best customers would choose? If we want to reimagine the future, we want to begin to think about who the customers are we're trying to serve. Are we getting ahead of them? Training. Are we involving customers in our training and development efforts? Are our training programs helping us anticipate and serve the customers? I should just stop. I often ask the question, who are the customers of HR? Generally, the answer is the employees. And I'd mark it wrong or incomplete. Who are the customers of HR? The business customers. I think we need to use the employees to get to the business. Okay, use some other examples. Performance management. Have we built standards and performance connected to customers? If a customer could look at our performance management system, would they say, those are the employees I want to hire? Rewards. Do we involve our customers in allocating rewards? One of the airlines I fly a lot on, and I travel quite a bit, has a program that's really cool. They've decided that 1% of their bonus money is given to their most frequent flyers. So I just got in from this airline at the first of the year, 10 coupons, each worth $100 US. When I fly, I as a customer can now give out the bonus money. What a great idea. It doesn't cost the airline anything. 1 to 2% of their bonus pool is now allocated by customers. By the way, it's fun to give it out. Here's a hint if you ever fly very much. Give it out early in a long flight. Because when you do that, you will get much better response. Do we link communications? Leadership. I think the issue of leadership is not do we have good leadership, but do we have leadership that helps build customer connection? We call it leadership brand. Are we doing things inside that connect outside? And culture, which I'll talk about. So here's my first exercise. My first question, what's the biggest challenge in my job today? I don't care what you wrote down. What I'd like you to do is put the words "so that" behind what you wrote. My challenge today is hiring people so that I can accomplish business strategy. Oh, that's pretty good. So that I can anticipate and meet the needs of our customers. So that I can respond quickly in a changing world. If I get two so that's, I go beyond shaping the present to really imagining the future. And I want to imagine that future. I want to see what it is by getting outside the firm and coming inside. So that's my first question. Are we connecting what we do to the key stakeholders of the company? When I interact with business leaders, here's the crossroads. My discussion should not just be about the HR systems, nor even how they deliver strategy. It should be about the world in which we live. And how do I go outside in to connect myself to that world? Okay, that's my first question. So how have you done up here at capturing that? What have you done? We're now looking at you. Hi. What have we done to capture that? By the way, I like that. What have we done here? What's my life-work balance? Okay. Nice job. Nice job. Look through the strategy. Is that a window? Mm-hmm. Nice job. Would you like to talk about it or just draw it?
I'll just draw.
I'll just draw and I'll talk, okay? By the way, look at this team. I'll be the words and you be the behavior. This is like a movie, Cyrano de Bergerac. Anyway, thank you. You're doing a great job. I think this is cool to see how this gets played out. Let me just stop. I get excited about that because I think that's really reimagining our future. We're not business partners because we deliver business goals. We're business partners because we create and anticipate the right business goals. Let me just stop. Any comments or questions about that? Then I'll go to question 2. So I got to ask, in my first question, how many of you wrote down something, the biggest challenge in my job, outside your company? How many wrote down something outside the company? I'm just curious what you wrote. Pace of change, marketplace, customers. Super, and I appreciate the microphone, folks. That's number 1. What did you write?
Funding challenges.
Say it once more.
About where I work for an international charity, and
Okay.
so one of my biggest challenges is about where we get our funding.
Super issue. Super issue. So are we able to attract funding, either debt or equity or some other source of funding, and can HR play a role in that? Let me jump ahead. There's 2 books that will be out this year. The first book is The Rise of HR, the 70 thought leaders that we're giving to people. The second one is the most exciting book I've been involved with, in addition to that book, in a long time. And it's arguing that as we go look for funding, leadership and the HR issues should be a major part of that discussion. If your company is doing fund searching, crowdsourcing or other fund sourcing, HR should be 10 to 20% of that engagement. Why should people fund my company? Because our leaders and HR systems guarantee, or more likely guarantee, reduce risk, that we'll meet the expectations we promise. What a great area to focus on. I'll talk about that a little more in a minute. Anyone else focus outside the company? Afraid to mention it. By the way, if you didn't, that's okay. Put "so that" behind what you wrote. And with 1 or 2 "so that," you get outside the walls of your company. Now, having said that, let me go to the second question. Here's the metaphor. There's a business meeting. We've talked about being at the table. Finance shows up at the meeting, and they bring economic data. Cool. Financial data, cost data. Marketing shows up with customer data, manufacturing with operational data. When HR comes to that meeting, what are the outcomes we promise? What's the data we bring? So take just a second, write them down. When HR comes to that meeting, what are the outcomes we talk about? So I think the issue is no longer getting at the table. Once we're at the table, what are we talking about? What's the information we bring? And just jot down 2 or 3 things. The silence is deafening, but at least you're thinking. By the way, I think that's an interesting question, because what does this external focus mean as I come to that discussion? Here's what I've discovered in a grossly simple way. There's 3 things I think we bring to the table. The first is information about talent. You just saw some great material with Dame Carol. Employee health and safety, well-being. We bring data, we bring information about the people, the workforce, the people, the skill set. In the field of HR, there's a huge movement that we rename it the field of talent management. In fact, talent has been hot. The War for Talent was written in about 1999, 2000 by the McKinsey Company, and in the last 20 years, everybody's focused on talent. Well-being, competence, commitment, the health and nurturing of our people. I think it's true. We bring talent, but I don't think it's all we bring. I think we also bring to that discussion a discussion of culture or capability. Talent is the individual. How are my people doing? Culture is the system. How well is our company doing? One of McKinsey's new businesses is organizational health. That's their word for culture. How do we bring talent and culture together? And the intersection of those 2 for me is leadership. In Dame Carol's results, leaders shape talent. Our people will do what our leaders do. It's one of the great metaphors. And if we're going to try to drive effective leadership, we need to help people see what leaders do and how we can shape it. Leaders also embody the culture. So my take is very simple. There's 3 things good HR people bring to the discussion. Talent. Right people, right place, right time, right skills. Culture, the right organization, the right systems, the right teamwork. And third, leadership. Look at what you wrote. What % of what you wrote down is about talent? What % is on culture? What % is on leadership? I think the field of HR today, and it's one of the takeaways in this book that you'll be getting sometime, I hope, and remind me to call. We're just about through the essays, and I think it'll be out in March, and we're sending it free, so you'll get a copy of it. One of the messages of that book is that talent is key, but it's not the only key. Here's some data that shows it. And I was in Brazil in August, and I showed this data, and it did not go over well. How often is the leading scorer, they win the Golden Boot, on the team that wins the World Cup? The Golden Boot, they're the great player, the best athlete. In football today, who's the best soccer player in the world? Okay, this is now going to get into a debate. Did that team win the World Cup? In fact, the best clip I've seen is did anyone watch the World Cup? Did you see the 5 minutes when Germany scored, was it 4 or 5 goals? Anyone see that clip? It was almost like a team of ballet. And by the way, when I was in Brazil, this didn't communicate well. But it wasn't the individual, it was an incredible teamwork. The answer to this question, 15%. 15% of the time to 20% of the time, talent will win. 80%, the team wins. It's true in almost every sport. 15 to 20% of the time, great talent wins. And it's also true in movies. The Academy Awards are coming. In the last 10 years, what % of time is the leading actor or actress in a movie that wins Movie of the Year? What would you say? I've just given you a hint before. 20%. 15% actors, 25% actresses. As an HR person, am I coming to the table with a discussion, and again, this is my message, talent, absolutely key. But can I go beyond talent? In fact, the book I hope to write for 2016 is The War for Talent was a great book. Now the book I want to write is Victory Through Organization. You fight a war on people, you win the war through the organization that you put together. How do we think about that? Again, that's trying to reimagine the future. So I'm at the university. How many have a master's degree? I'm going to give you a test. Final exam. Who has primary accountability and responsibility for the human resource issues within a company? Who has primary accountability and responsible? Multiple choice, because it's America and people can't write. A, line manager. B, the HR manager. C, it's shared. D, the consultant. E, I don't care, I'm going into finance. It's one of my favorite test questions. 80 to 90% of the students answered C, and it's wrong. Who has primary accountability for talent, leadership, and culture within a company? I think the line manager does. So what's our job? As human resource professionals, line managers are the owners. They make the decision, they follow up. I think we have two roles. One, I think we're architects. Architects build blueprints, they solve puzzles, they build frameworks. But given the outside-in metaphor, I also think we're anthropologists. In the talent game, are we hiring people that will meet our customer needs in the future? Are we looking out to what's next? Don't hire people against a good system, hire people against customer requirements. Culture, and I'll talk about this, does our culture reflect our customers? It's not that we have a healthy organization, it's that we have an effective organization. Well-being. Will our employee well-being link to customer satisfaction? One of the coolest studies I've seen out of NHS, and Dame Carol did not refer to it, there's a high correlation between employee commitment and well-being in healthcare in the UK, 62 systems, and patient care. I think that's interesting. Can we connect what we do inside to outside? Leadership. Are we hiring leaders that our customers would want us to hire? Everything we do in HR as an anthropologist can be connected to the outside world. Do we observe? Do we see what's next? Now I'm going to take you through kind of what's happening in each of those three. Before I do that, let me go back to my second question. And let me just talk with you a minute. What are the outcomes of effective HR? I hope you had a chance to write something down. How many of you mostly wrote things about talent? Oh, people don't want to talk. Stand up. Everybody stand up. This way, everybody's guaranteed to speak. Stand up. Stand up, if you can. This is part of the health activity that Dame Carol would encourage. Now do 25 deep knee bends. Move your arm hard to the right and smack the person to your right. That's called boxing. This is exercise. Okay. On question 2, if you mostly wrote about talent, have a seat. That's cool. This is the way we do research. That's 47%. That's a funny joke given American politics, which you probably don't appreciate. How many wrote mostly about culture and systems? Have a seat. How many wrote mostly their answer about leadership? Have a seat. How many did not answer the question? Have a seat. Okay, still standing. Did you write about all three of them?
Yeah, but mostly about organization and structure.
Organization, structure. Let me put that in with the, where are we? Let me put that in with this piece mostly. The structure, the systems. One way to talk about, one of the problems we have in this bucket, organization, is we don't have a language for it yet. Some call it systems theory, processes, capabilities, and getting that language clear is going to be a challenge. Next year, the book. So why are you still standing? Financial success. Good. My only question would be, remember I said before, so that. Now I'd say because of. The because of starts with financial success. I totally agree. I come to the table committed to it. Because of, what do I uniquely bring? And that's where I hope we get to some of this. Great answer. Oh, why are you still standing? I mean, maybe you just want to demonstrate fitness and exercise.
Yeah, sustainable business.
Same question, because of. Super, I think we've got folks. Thank you. I want to go into these three. Talent. Let me give you a very simple formula. How many have PhDs? How many have a PhD? We got to have PhDs. Any PhDs? Where's a PhD? Oh, doctor. No. My PhD 30 years ago was in numerical taxonomy. Whoa. 50 pounds if you know what it is, 100 if you care. Taxonomy is the study of patterns, the study of order. How do you make simple what's chaotic? And that's been a driving factor in my whole career. How do I find simple ways to capture very complex stuff? Here's my simple formula for talent. I'm sitting in a business meeting. Do we have the right talent? 3 questions. Competence, right skill set for today as well as for tomorrow. Skill set tied to customers. Skill set customers expect. Do we have the right competence? Commitment. Are our people willing to work hard? Critical form of engagement. And I think, David, how many have seen work by David McLeod in the UK? I think it's some of the best work I've ever seen. And so let me really commend it to you. Who knows his work pretty well? Who's willing to give a 1-minute headline? Do you want to give a 1-minute synopsis back here? Could we get a, and I don't want to point this. Raise your hand, stand up so that we can get you a mic. Give us a 1-minute synopsis, it's mic 4, of David McLeod's work. It's really fascinating.
I had to volunteer, didn't I? I had to wave my hand in the air. So David looks after a group with Nita Clark called Engage for Success. Some of you in this room will have seen them keynote here. Who's seen Dave on the stage? Not that many, or shy as well. So David looks at employee engagement across all parts of the UK, and he's expanding that into the world, and how that improves productivity, well-being, and a bunch of other good stuff.
I think, by the way, I just find his work fascinating. When I've met with him and talked with him, I think he focuses aggressively on engagement as a form of commitment. It's an employee value proposition, part of the UK productivity phenomena. I think the engagement literature, though, is shifting. And you saw some of that with Dame Carroll. Commitment is more behavioral. Do I show up at work? Contribution is more emotional. Do I show up with my whole heart and soul? The commitment literature, the Gallup 12-item index, or some other commitment indices, often talk about well-being in terms of do you show up? I think the issue today is do you show up fully engaged with what you're doing? You can show up and not show up, if that makes sense. You can be present but not present. And what she talked about is how do I find well-being at work? How do I create what's called a growth mindset? How does work become exciting? We did a book on that called The Why of Work. How do you help people find a sense of abundance, of meaning? So if I'm in HR, come to a meeting. Question 1, do we have the right talent for today and tomorrow? I reshape the present. I reimagine the future. Do we have the talent for what we're trying to become? Commitment. Are my people willing to work hard? Do they give their discretionary energy? Contribution. Do they find meaning and purpose from the hard work that they do? We believe that if you focus on meaning and purpose, the employees will be self-sustaining, not other-sustaining. The person whose work this follows the best is Martin Seligman. Martin Seligman is a psychologist, president of the American Psychology Association. He looks at what causes people to have sustained happiness in their lives. What causes you to have a sense of growth? When we bring that into work, we can begin to make that happen. Talent, key factor. Most of us get it. We're trying in HR to bring talent to the workplace. Culture. When you think of a company's culture, what comes to mind? Our culture is our, what comes to mind? Fill in the blank. Culture is the way we get things done. Nice. Anyone else? Values. So we go off, we write a value statement, we look at cultural work. I think traditionally the concept of culture has gone through 3 phases. Phase 1 is culture as an event. You can see it. You can experience it. You come into a company and you can test its culture by observing what's going on. It would be, is anybody sitting next to somebody they work with? Who's sitting next to somebody they work with? Good. The 3 of you? Nice. When you walk into one of the 3 of you's workspace, whatever space it is, an office, a cubicle, a desk, whatever the modern space is, how long before that space tells me something about that person?
1 second.
1 second. So which of the other 2 people are you thinking about? And her. What does her space tell me about her?
Tidy. She likes chocolate.
Okay. So I got 2 things, tidy and chocolate. You know, that's 50% good. By the way, that's my criteria, and it's not the tidiness. So, you know, if you want to give her a sense of well-being, it's cloaked in a Mars bar. Whatever comes with Mars is good. By the way, the culture is an event. We see it, we observe it, and you get it really quickly. It doesn't take long in any store or place that you visit. But then culture becomes a pattern. It's how we do things. It's our values. I want to suggest that culture, from an outside-in point of view, becomes our identity. The issue is not, do you have a set of values? The issue is the value of those values. Will your culture reflect what customers are promised? And so what I love to do is think about culture from the outside in. When I think about culture, start with my customer. What are the promises I've made my customer? What have I promised them? What have I hoped they'll get? That shows up in your brand statement. A lot of companies do a cultural audit by listing the characteristics of their culture. I love to do a cultural audit by saying, what have we promised our customers? What's the promises we've made our customers in our brands? Social media, print media, advertising. Those are the promises we've made to our customers. How do those external promises now show up as our cultural characteristics? Because when our internal culture reflects our external promises, culture becomes a source of value. Let me give an example. Somebody said, culture is values. I think values are often defined. I bet some of your companies have value statements, true or false? True. This was Consulting 101 the last 15 years. How were they created? Management team went off-site with a facilitator, without a facilitator, came up with a set of values. Not a bad idea, but it's still inside. As an HR person, here's my advice. Take those key values and use them to reimagine the future. By the way, I'm supposed to say reshape the present, reimagine the future. That's the theme for this conference. I was told I got a bonus of 1,000 pounds if I said it 6 times. So I'm at time 4. Reimagine the anyway, money is a motivator. If it would have been a Mars bar, it would have been better. Okay. HR, go with your sales and marketing people to your customers. Take your value statement. Ask those customers 3 questions. Number 1, are these the values you want us to have? What a simple question. We value innovation. Yeah, we'd like that. Are these the values you want us to have? What a simple question. But by the way, that's filtering our values through the eyes of the customer. I was in a company a few years ago. Here was their number 1 value. We want to be the most profitable firm in our industry. Take that to your customer. Here's the thing I want the most. For us to make money at your expense. What a stupid value. Question 1, are these the values you want us to have? Question 2, what do we have to do to show that we live them? Instead of us defining the behavior through some internal mechanism, let the customer define the behavior. Let me give an example. Does anyone here travel and you show up late at night in a hotel, nice hotel? I showed up pretty late last night at the hotel across the street, great hotel. And the bellman comes out and grabs the suitcase out of the taxi or the car and immediately runs it into the hotel as a form of good service. Okay, imagine the scenario. Let me get really anchored. It happened a few months ago in Dubai. 3 a.m., I'm tired, I have a talk at 7. The bellman comes, grabs my suitcase. He said, "Oh, welcome, I give you good service." He grabs my bag, runs into the hotel. How many like that? How many dislike that? That one was an easier prediction. Why do you dislike it? It's my bag. I've carried it 6,000 miles. I can carry it 6 feet. I don't have change. I'm embarrassed. I'm not going to be able to give a tip. I don't have local currency. Or there's stuff, you're nodding, there's stuff in your bag you don't want anyone else to see. Or it's going to take 30 more minutes to get it to my room and I'm really tired and I just want to go to sleep. Value is defined by the receiver, not the giver. Culture is not defined by who we say we are. The value of culture is who our customers want us to become. So question 1, are these the values you want? Question 2, you tell us what we do to live them. You tell us what we do to live them. Question 3, in turning values from the inside to the outside, are these the values you want us to have? What do we have to do to show you that we live them? Question 3, when we do those things you just said, will you buy more from us? I spend half my time speaking to business leaders. I say, let's talk about culture. 40%, their eyes just glaze over. I take them through those 3 questions. I come to number 3 and they say, ooh, say that again. Will you buy more product from us because of our culture? And if the answer is not yes, you got the wrong one. Then those business leaders go, I get it. The value of culture is to create value in our market. That's the culture, outside in. And that's where we're headed. I don't disagree with internal statements of culture. They're wonderful. But I'm not sure if they're accurate. I want that culture to be connected to our customers. Leadership. Do we have the right talent? I come to the discussion talking about competence, commitment, contribution. Do we have the right culture? I come to the discussion talking about culture and identity and who we're known for and how we make that happen. And then leadership. Do we have leaders who can shape the right talent by their behavior and who can create the right culture? Do our leaders reflect our identity? I'll just highlight briefly, and I'm going to do a workshop on it in more detail. I think one of the coolest things happening in the study of leadership, and I'm not going to cover these questions in this room so much. Investors make a decision. Investors outside your company. When you want to get capital, either debt investors or equity investors, somebody who funds my company. We've discovered about 38% of their decision is, will your company make money? 40%, 35, 40%. Does your company have a likelihood of returning money? 30 to 35%, does your company have a good strategy? Do you know where you're going? Do you know how you're going to make money in the future? And about 30%, does your company have good leadership? I think that's cool. One of the trends that we're seeing is what we call, excuse me, the market value of leadership. Investors care about leadership. And here's an insight. They don't know how to measure it. They don't know how to track it. The other book that's coming out, it's drafted, will be out in August, is called the Leadership Capital Index. There's a Moody's index, a Fitch's index in the UK, a Standard & Poor's index. Does your company have good credit worthiness in managing capital? If you have good credit worthiness, Ian, could you grab me a glass of water, please? If your company has good credit worthiness, thank you, you're going to be able to borrow money at less money because you pay your debts. If your company has bad credit worthiness, you pay a premium. Why don't we have the same for leadership? If your company has good leadership, we should be able to have easier access to capital. We should have thank you very much, easier access to what we're trying to accomplish. We've created an index that measures that. It is not a perfect index, but let me tell you how excited it is. We see investors saying leadership is 30%, plus or minus 5 or 10, of what we look at when we invest in a company, when we access capital, your comment. How do we in HR now give those investors more confidence about our leadership premium? My sense is that's going to be an issue on the outside in that we in HR can begin to play with. The market value of leadership. That's where we're headed with leadership. Okay. I've answered question 1. What's the biggest challenge in my job? Question 2. I hope that whatever you wrote down, if it was talent, structure, I hope you've got a trilogy in your head. What is it we bring to the discussion? Talent, leadership, culture, or structure. How do we manage those 3 pieces? Let me just stop. Comments or questions about that? Any comments or questions about those 3?
I think we also bring connectivity, because without the connectivity between all the different parts, we can't optimize business performance as well. I think our ability to join up the dots in a sensible way helps to drive the best conversations at exec level.
Amen, amen, amen. Because I don't think it's an isolated HR practice. It's one of the dilemmas. 10 years ago, we said, let's go study best practices. Well, the problem with the best practice is embedded within a system. And you can take a practice out of the system and you don't transfer the system. And so that's, somebody talked about organization structure, the system. It's called systems theory. It's, if you looked at a car and you took all the pieces apart and there was a steering wheel on the floor, that's not a steering wheel until it's connected to the car. And there's some wonderful thinking about how do you build those systems that help us succeed. In fact, we found in our research that one of the key predictors of HR success is integrated HR solutions, not isolated HR practices. So, great comment. I wish I'd have said it before. Any other comments about, or questions? Yes, we have a, if you could raise your hand, we'll get a microphone to you before, if anybody else has a comment. And if you're not answering questions, you can think about question 3. Yes, sir.
When you were talking about culture and your new definition of it, you held a sort of hypothetical conversation where you're asking your customer, what values do you want us to have? Tell us how to live them. If obviously that's a hypothetical conversation, in real terms, how are you finding that data? And how do you know that your customers know what they want in terms of culture?
Great question. You got 2 things. One is, and it's not hypothetical, we're working now with HR groups that spend somewhere between 5 and 10% of their time with marketing and salespeople visiting customers. So this isn't just a hypothetical, it's a real conversation we can have. Customers sometimes don't know what they don't know. And so sometimes the value of our creating a culture is to anticipate what they may need if we can understand their need better. In marketing, one of the dilemmas of marketing is you don't just ask a customer, what would you like in the car? You observe the customer as an anthropologist and find out what they're doing. Which car did that? The minivan. There was no research that said the minivan is a great idea. What you have is a station wagon and you have a truck. Lee Iacocca at Chrysler and others started to observe. People have children, they take children. Station wagons don't work very well. Trucks aren't very comfortable. Let's come up with something that we as an anthropologist can anticipate that somebody else may not see. And that's, for me, some of the beauty of good HR work, is we can anticipate what that might be. The issue is to engage customers in the relationship. There's 4 ways to engage customers, and let me just do this real quick. The first is transaction. Go online, you buy it, I pay for it. I buy a Mars bar transaction. The second way is to serve them. I'll serve you well as I sell you the product or service, and customer focus has been aggressive at service. Third way is to partner with them. Let's form a partnership. The fourth way is to anticipate them. This is one of the issues of the power of data in anticipation. Has anyone ever bought a book from Amazon? Amazon now has data on you. They can anticipate what you might like in terms of your reading preference. Here's the newest Harlequin novel. Given that you've bought 10, you'll buy the 11th. That's anticipation. I think in HR, as we meet with our customers, we can not only transact well, serve well, partner well, and co-create, but we can anticipate what they might expect. Great comment, thank you. Now, question 3. So what does it take for HR to make this transformation happen? How do we in HR deliver value from the outside in? How do we deliver talent, leadership, and culture? We've thought a lot about HR transformation, and in my spirit of simplicity, we've tried to put it into phases. Phase 1, why are we doing it? By the way, what should the answer to that be? How many of your companies are in the process, or if you do consulting, companies you consult with, are in the process of doing some form of HR transformation? Lots of us are. We often jump to the solution before we get into the concept. And the answer of why we do it, what should the answer be? We're doing it so we can hire better people. No. We're doing it to win in a changing marketplace. And the purpose of transformation, if you want to reimagine that future, is to identify what the future holds. Phase 2, what are the outcomes of transformation? If we do good HR transformation, we will help deliver business value because of talent, leadership, and culture. Now we come to phase 3. How do we structure and run HR? By the way, phase 4, who's accountable, we've talked about. Here's my summary of those 4 phases. By the way, how are we doing on the pictures? Pretty good. Is there? Huh? I'm running out of space. You're running out of space, and I'm running out of time. This is mutually good. I've got about 17 more concepts. So, oh, this is so cool. Could I get a copy of this?
Absolutely, everyone can.
Oh, it comes with the free book. Let me go through it. Business context, outside in. What's the state? When we sit and transform HR, what's the business case? Number 2, outcomes, talent, leadership, culture, capability. Number 3, how do we design HR? How do we build the right HR function? How do we build the right HR structure? How do we get the right HR practices in an integrated way? How do we have the right HR skills and the right HR metrics? I'm going to talk about 2 of those in detail. And finally, who's accountable? Line managers and HR. HR design. Do we have the right HR structure? Now I'm going to tell you what's fascinating. We asked 67 essays, 72 some are co-authored thought leaders. For HR to deliver value in the future, what must we know and do better? Of those 67 essays in this book called The Rise of HR, how many are about the structure of the HR department? Take a guess. 0 to 67. Just pick a number. Too high. 10 is too high. Take another number. 4, too high. 0. 0. Actually, 1 mentions it briefly, and it's someone from the UK. My sense is in the UK, there seems to be a passion with the 3-legged stool and the Ulrich model. You know what? Most folks don't care. It isn't the structure that helps us win. I was actually really fascinated when I read these essays. What we want to do in an HR department are 3 simple principles. Number 1, make sure that it matches or separates transaction from strategic work. How are we going to do the transaction work of HR? Payroll, registration for training, healthcare costs, benefits costs. How will that get done today and in the future? Through technology. You'll insource it, you'll outsource it. It's a great debate. In some way, it doesn't matter. Technology will take care of that administrative work. BP was the first to do that with Exult. It didn't work perfectly. We've seen now most companies do the transaction work through technology and the strategic work. Second, make sure our HR structure matches the business structure. This, for me, is the aha. Somebody did a study a few years ago, and they studied government agencies, police forces, and small enterprises with fewer than 500 people. And they said the complex HR structure with centers of expertise and business partners doesn't work. My comment was, duh. You've just studied organizations that are hierarchically structured. Police departments, small enterprises. They're not complex. They're not multidivisional. The HR structure should match the business structure. If your business structure is structured top-down, more centralized, have an HR function that matches it. If you're a holding company like Virgin, have an HR structure in each of the separate businesses. And number 3, when you have a multidivisional company, build a professional services organization. Does anyone work at a consulting firm or a professional services firm? Which firm? I don't know it. Super. This is a chance to advertise. How successful is the firm? Say it again, the name.
So the name of the international law firm is Ashurst.
Okay, international law firm.
Yeah.
How many would like to go to lunch with an attorney? No, I won't ask that again. How many have worked, has anyone worked with Accenture, PwC, McKinsey? You know how they're organized? They have client relationship managers who form a long-term intimate relationship, the law firm. For a big account, you probably have an attorney dedicated to that account. Or for a project, you dedicate an attorney. That attorney then pulls together a team of resources to service that account. At PwC, you have an auditing account. You pull together resources from their experts to serve that account. You know what? That's what HR is. We have centers of expertise, networks of expertise, resources that are dedicated to serve the accounts that we have. And the final piece. What skills do we need in HR? We've done studies on this since 1987. This is the 2002 result. 5 skills for good HR people. Strategic positioner. It's not enough to know the business. You have to know the business well enough to position it in the marketplace you serve. When I ask HR people, what do you have to do to be good? You have to know the business. Incomplete. You have to know it so that we can position. In the middle, credible activist. It isn't personal credibility. It's credibility with a point of view. And then in green, building capabilities. That's culture. Managing change. That's the world we live in. Notice HR innovator and integrator to your HR solutions. And I think we named this wrong. We called it technology. It should have been called information. How do you manage analytics and data and information to win? We are now redoing this research. In fact, the survey was finished last week online. If you're interested, talk to Nicole. This is another freebie. Has anyone participated in our HR competency research? If you're interested, talk to Nicole, and Nicole will send me your name. You'll get a link that says, fill out a survey on yourself with about 100 items. It's a 360. Send it to those you know. You will get a personal feedback report. This, again, is part of the research. It's free. We collect that, and we have in the data set last time about 20,000 people. So it's a big data set that people can learn how they rank against the rest of the world. Let me tell you the hypotheses we have going forward. Hypothesis number 1, information and technology becomes more critical. By the way, I'm not sure these are going to be true. We'll test it. But it looks today in the world we live in that information, analytics, data becomes even more critical. It was important in 2012, more so today. Second, the management of paradox. I just think we look for answers, not probing alternatives. I don't know how to do that, but I think that's one of the challenges. Third, granularity. There is not one size fits all. HR has to learn to adapt to the situation. And there's a fourth piece we're looking at. Oh, the importance of capability and culture. Is it about the individual or is it about the team? That's what we're looking at. Okay. I've talked at you a long time. I said you could organize your notes into 3 parts. Let me tell you where I began, then we'll see if there are any questions or comments, and Miriam may have some comments or questions as well. I think HR is at a crossroads. I hope I started by saying I'm excited about the future of HR. I think the rise of HR has more choices than ever. Question one, because we're outside in. Leadership. Don't look at leadership as what leaders need to do to be authentic. Authenticity is not the issue. Market value is the issue. How do we convince investors that our leaders' authenticity will lead to the investors making more money? Boy, that's cool. How do we get outside in? Number two, so what are the outcomes of HR? Talent, the war for talent. Cool battle. By the way, let me just share a story that captured that. Last August, I was interviewing a chief HR officer, and he came out of systems and operations. He said, I've been the head of HR since June for about 2 months. All of my HR people talk about talent, talent, talent. Hire, train, pay our people. He said, as I look at this, if you think of an S curve, I think we're 60 to 70% of the way up the S curve. We know how to hire people, we know how to pay people, we know how to train people. He said, my problem is, how do we make the whole more than the parts? How do we build a system? And how do we take individuals and make the team better? The teamwork stuff I talked about. He said, I think we're 10 to 20% up that grid. Talent, culture, leadership. And number three, have we transformed HR, both our functions and our people? Okay, does anyone have a comment or observation now that you've perhaps shared it with somebody? Any comments or observations? Then we'll turn to discussion. Question, yes. And again, the microphones really help, just so that people can hear.
Hi, my name is Meg Pepin. I'm here today blogging and tweeting, so that it's broadcasting to lots of different people. So I think one of the tweets came through saying, if I'm sort of doing culture, leadership and talent, how am I doing my real work? So I tweeted back saying, that is your job as a manager.
Good, thank you.
And she said on her job description, 10% of her time is to be apportioned to management. So, and I think, you know, there's a reality for people that management still isn't seen as real work in some senses. So I guess the question is, what's the role for HR to lead that change of mindset in the organisations?
What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what somebody had tweeted this morning. Is this stuff new to us? And my response is, as long as organisations are designed in the way that they are, and our attitudes to work and family and life and human values are as they are, we'll always be having to have these conversations. So I think
let me try to respond to two things. This is one reason I start with these questions. I often finish and say, there's nothing new. And then I say, so how did you answer question one? Did you go outside? How did you answer question two? Did you talk about talent, leadership, and culture? How did you answer question three? I mean, when we're done, it's obvious. Here's an insight. To win a sports game, you have to score more points than your opponent. Wow. The question is, what do you do? So that's easy. Now, how does this tie with real work? Where's my paradox friend? Guess what? You got to do it both. And first of all, this is real work. I think that statement is a signal of what's in their mind. How do you do administrative and strategic work? I did a book in '97, it's almost 20 years old now, called HR Champions. The major message of that work was it's not from administrative to strategic, it's and also. How do you do them both? I don't know. Some of the administrative stuff, if you're doing clerical work that's scalable, repeatable, standard, get it online. Go to one of the online services. Quit doing that stuff. If you're doing too much strategic work and the administrative work fails, you've designed a brilliant car that doesn't drive. I think you've got to somehow find it. And finally, I think that begins, the management of paradox often begins not with what we do, but with who the customer is and user is of what we do. So one way to manage that is with the line manager. How can I help you get more value and deliver your goals better? Is it cost per hire per employee? I'll go back to the crossroads. That's more administrative. Or is it building talent, leadership, and culture that will help us serve our customers better? I sense that in many cases, you got to do both, but in many cases, it's the latter. Any comments or questions from our esteemed chair? We're going to sit. This is fun. This is fun. This is not fitness, but...
No, I'm lazy.
By the way, this
I'm
is...
not very good with fitness.
Oh, I just got 500 steps on my little step monitor, so.
That's why you're walking.
That's why I was
yeah,
walking,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So you deserve a break. I've been sitting down the whole time, so I probably don't. I was curious about culture. We were just talking a little bit about that now. You were talking about whether your culture reflects what customers are promised. You said it's not about whether you have values, but about the value of your values. How does all that feed into your thinking about what comes next in HR? I mean, not to be too kind of theoretical about this, but a model for the future. What are you working on in the years to come?
I think one of the challenges, and it's again paradoxical, once we know what we want our culture to be in terms of expectations from customers. So you're in the media. What do I want the viewer to see? And I want them to see thought leadership. I want them to see creativity. How do we then make that real inside? I think there's 5 steps. Number 1 is what I call the intellectual agenda. Define that culture explicitly. Here's clearly what our values are through the eyes of the customer. Second is what I call a behavioral agenda. So what behaviors will the customer see that change that? Third is the process agenda. What processes or systems do we put in place? Hiring, training. And fourth, there's 4 steps. Fourth is the leadership agenda. What behaviors would I see in my leaders? And our job in HR is to be the anthropologist to define the desired culture, and then the architect to build the blueprint for making it happen.
You have to start with the vision and then work backwards.
Yeah, and the only, agreed, thank you. What I'd hope is that the vision is not just in my mind, but in my mind where I hope my customers will be. And somebody made a great point. You don't just ask the customers, you anticipate where they're going. I think we've taken our time. I hope you walk away with me enthused and excited about the rise of HR. Thank you for your time.